Hi, my name is Eric Paglia. Welcome to the talk show at the World Water Week in Stockholm. On this talk show, we'll be discussing public-private partnerships and how Veolia has developed PPP arrangements in very different contexts around the world to provide municipal water and wastewater services. The examples and the experts that we'll focus on are from Japan and Namibia. I'm very happy to be joined by Yumiko Noda, Chairman and Representative Director of Veolia Japan, and Berenice Nadaitwa, Process and Research Manager at Windhoek Operating Company. Thank you very much for joining us here for this session of the talk show. And Yumiko, perhaps we can start with you. Could you please tell us a bit about your career in business and politics, in particular the partnerships you've been involved with between the public and private sectors?
Okay, thank you, Eric, for the very kind introduction. Currently I work for Veolia Japan as a chairman and a representative director, but my background, business background, is quite unique. I have been involved in a public-private partnership over the last 25 years almost, in 4 different capacities. First, as a banker; second, as a consultant; third, as a civil servant; and fourth, as a solution provider as Veolia. So first, as a bank, I was working in London for a Japanese bank, and I was financing into PFI projects in late 1990s. At that time, UK government was really pushing for the PFI program, and we were acting as the lead bank for the big PFI transport projects. And then I moved to PricewaterhouseCoopers in London, and I was advising the government in London and Tokyo. I was so passionate and enthusiastic about bringing the UK PFI concept into Japan to improve the effectiveness and efficiency of the public services. So I moved to Japan, set up a new practice on PPP PFI, and advising Japanese government to adopt the new PPP program. Advising on the setting up the legal framework, policy framework, advising many pathfinding type projects in Japan. Then I moved to the civil service. I was a vice mayor in Yokohama City. The Yokohama City is the second largest city in Japan with 3.7 million population. It's a big city, and I was in charge of the water bureau. And I managed the PPP projects in the purification water project using the PFI scheme at that time. And also pushed for the public-private partnership for creating the value for the citizens. I set up the new dedicated unit to foster PPP at the Yokohama City. And finally, at Veolia, we are currently involved in 2 iconic PPP concession projects. One is in Hamamatsu City, the other one is Miyagi Prefecture. So that's me, and both public sector and private sector experience.
Your enthusiasm for PPP comes across very clearly. Perhaps you can tell us a bit about PPP in Japan in general and the extent to which it has penetrated the water sector at this point.
First, the Japanese government adopted the PFI program back in 1999 by enacting the PFI promotion law, which is to enable the private sector to provide design, construct, manage, and operate the infrastructure assets. And also enabling the public sector to enter into the long-term contract up to 30 years to get the expertise from the private sector. Over time, Japanese PFI market has really evolved, grown very steadily. As of today, we have almost 900 PPP projects in different sectors, education sector, healthcare sector, prison sector, defense sector, or roads and airports, and water and wastewater. And the background to PPP in Japan is really threefold. The first is the aging infrastructure. The majority of the Japanese infrastructure were built in 60s and 70s and 80s, when Japan's really booming economically and the population is growing. And those assets are very old now and reaching the end of the lifespan. Secondly, the government is under the fiscal pressure, and they don't have money to really upgrade upgrade the infrastructure assets. Thirdly, because of the population, shrinking in Japan, we are, losing the manpower and the municipal governments. So those three factors combined is really leading to the use of PPP, private sector involvement in the public sector services. So that's the background of Japanese PPP program.
Okay. And Bernice, perhaps you can tell us a bit about your professional background and your work at Windhoek.
Well, I'm the Process and Research Manager at Windhoek, the Windhoek operating company. I've been there for 5 years now, where I'm in charge of process operations and management. And yes, so we have a reuse facility at the city of Windhoek, which is at the heart of our climate mitigation and water demand management strategy. So thank you so much.
And what's been the main benefits of implementing PPP there at Windhoek?
Well, one of the key drivers for implementing PPP was to get financing unlocked for the development of the project. That was one of the reasons. It is also for sustainable water supply for the city of Windhoek. I don't know if you know Windhoek very well, but we're prone to very many droughts. So it's a very dry country, and the city of Windhoek is not immune to droughts. So very often we have droughts. So one of the key factors was to have a water supply that can withstand droughts and also to supplement the existing water supply sources that were available. And then another PPP that we have at the city of Windhoek, apart from Windhoek, is UYAMS. And that was for environmental protection. It's an irrigation reuse for industrial wastewater. So we have those two different types of PPPs at Windhoek, in Windhoek. So one was focusing mainly on development, and there was a design and build, which is a D&B, and then the other one is operations and management. So it's two very different requirements for the city of Windhoek, and those are the two PPPs that we have implemented so far.
And Yumiko, given your experience on both sides of the PPP equation, what sorts of expectations does the public sector have for the private sector in such arrangements?
I would say three things. The first is efficiency. The second one is innovation. The third one is maybe more investment for the new projects and existing projects. On the efficiency, the PFI is really about improving the life cycle management of the assets to generate the value for the citizens, basically. So in the public sector, in Japan, basically PFI is adopted, PPP is used when PFI can generate the additional savings for the life cycle perspective. So the public sector expects the operational expertise and efficiency from the private sector to be able to reduce the life cycle cost for the management of the infrastructure assets. Innovation, public sector wants to have more innovative ideas and solutions, especially related to digital solutions and environmental solutions, decarbonization solutions as well. According to my experience at the public sector, the city government, public sector is not very good at the digital solution, IT solutions. So they will look at the private sector to bring in the most advanced technology and digital tools to be able to manage the infrastructure assets in a most optimal, efficient way. So that's important points.
And what values can Veolia provide in terms of public water and wastewater service in Japan? And what have been the main achievements so far?
Yes, Veolia as a global water company, we can bring in the expertise in operation and maintenance. We have 170 years of history. We have abundant experience and expertise in operating the water and wastewater facilities. So we can bring in the ability to really manage the operation in a most optimal way, reducing the cost and we're ensuring the quality service to the citizens. We can bring in digital solutions. We can, tap the most advanced digital, platform solutions to be able to manage the, assets in a most efficient manner. I'd like to introduce two cases in Japan, which we won and operate right now. One is in Hamamatsu City, west side of Tokyo, the center part of Japan. This is the first wastewater PPP concession project in Japan. And we manage the wastewater treatment plant, providing the service to 480,000 people in Hamamatsu City. The governance structure is like this. This Hamamatsu City continues to own the facility. They set the tariff. They monitor the performance of us and make sure that we, the private sector, provides the quality services at the set price. And we created additional 47 local jobs there as well. So we care about the local community to be able to help support the community. We brought operational expertise and digital solution. Same for Miyagi Prefecture concession project. This is the first drinking water concession project. This also includes wastewater facilities and industry water supply facilities. So we operate 4 wastewater facilities, 4 industry water facilities, and 2 drinking water facilities. It's a very big contract servicing 2 million population in Miyagi Prefecture, which is northern part of Japan. Again, the governance structure is very similar to Hamamatsu City. The government still in control of the service provision. They continue to own the assets, and they set the price. They monitor our performance using the third-party, committee structure. So we just provide the service. We maintain the facility. We operate the facility. We upgrade the facility to ensure that citizens still, continue to receive the high-quality water services from the private sector like us. And we work with the local community. We work with the local Japanese companies. It's not just us. We form a consortium with the local companies. As a team, we provide the services which is catered for the local needs of the people.
Oh, very interesting. And Berenice, your contract includes a very substantial construction component. Are the PPPs all fairly similar on these kinds of projects?
No, Eric. The PPP can take on a form that is suitable for the public entity. So the needs will be assessed by the public entity, and that can be an operate and management contract. It can be a build, own, transfer contract. It can be build, own, operate, transfer. As with the city of Windhoek, we have both BOOT, which is a build, own, operate, and transfer for 21 years. And then it'll be transferred to the public entity. And with Wingok, we have an operation and management agreement where the asset is owned by the public entity, and we just manage the affairs and the operation and the maintenance of that utility. So it really depends on the need. What do you need? What do you want? And then the private sector will then come in to find a solution for that need. So it can be anything that you want it to be. Yeah.
Okay, so it provides quite a bit of flexibility then.
Yes, it's very flexible, but the control still remains with the public entity, where they would need to regulate the private entity and to make sure that all the regulations are in place, all the KPIs are met, so that it's beneficial to both parties and also mainly to the people in which the utility is there to serve.
And Yumiko, what are some of the major challenges in the further promotion of PPP in the Japanese water sector?
There are still many challenges, but I will highlight 2 key challenges. The first one is the misperception of PPP among the general public and resistance toward having private sector in the water sector, especially the foreign companies like us. There's, the strong resistance against that. Many people mixed up PPP with the complete privatization, meaning that, the whole ownership will be transferred completely to the private sector, and private sector can freely decide the tariff. So if the private sector operates the water facility, people fear that the price of the water goes up, maybe like Evian water. I don't know. So there's a strong skepticism and fear and resistance toward having private sector operating in the water sector, especially in the drinking water side in Japan, because of the misunderstanding of PPP. As I said earlier, PPP is completely different from privatization. Under the PPP, still the government is in control of the final delivery of the water services to the citizens. And they set the standard, they set the requirement for the quality, they specify the output. They don't specify the input, but they specify the outcome and output to make sure that private sector, performs and delivers. And also, again, as I mentioned earlier, there is a very stringent monitoring, the scheme. So public sector always, monitor the performance of us using the third-party, committee in Japan. So, the PPP scheme is totally different from the, total privatization. We cannot set the price, of course, and we always have to, meet the requirement of the government and just to make sure that we provide efficient services, reduce the cost, ensuring the, delivery high quality services, and, help the government to, provide more environment friendly or efficient service to the citizens. So I think clearing this misperception is very important in Japan. And I feel that we are responsible for delivering the good service to gain the trust from the general public, the citizens. The second challenge is the lack of capacity and willingness of the municipal governments, civil servants for PPP. PPP is a very complex, scheme structure. It requires professional kind of, understanding on financial aspect, legal aspect, and technical aspect. And it requires massive, energy and effort and expertise to be able to structure the best, structure to optimize, to achieve the best value for money for the citizens. So, especially in Japan, the local, the governments, because of the shrinking population, they're losing manpower. They don't have the enough, people to be able to, have that knowledge and, procure the PFI, PPP projects in a proper manner. So that's, I think, the capacity, the lack of resource capacity is one of the challenges.
I can imagine an important part of your responsibilities is actually communicating as well to explain what PPP actually entails and to sort of clarify a lot of these misconceptions.
Yes. So I try to, raise awareness and correct the misperception. Again, PPP is for the benefit of the citizens, general public, that achieves the better value for money as compared to the traditional solutions. So it is the public, general public who benefits from the use of PPP, but they don't really, understand. Especially in the water sector, the difficulty is that people cannot understand, cannot see the real benefit of PPP because it's only, the cost reduction. If it's, let's say, airport, in Japan, we have lots of airport projects. If it's airport, by bringing private sector, the airport becomes more attractive, many nice shops, more convenient, services. So they can see how private sector can, provide better services in the airport sector. But in the water, we are addressing, the life cycle cost, optimization. But people don't see the difference between the quality of the water by having the private sector. So it's very difficult for the citizens to understand the benefit of using private sector in the water sector, because we cannot really address the revenue side, or so still.
That's a very interesting distinction, actually. Now, Berenice, Yumiko mentioned declining workforces as a challenge that's faced in Japan, but also that's something that you have to address in Namibia as well, with aging populations and people retiring. I mean, as a young professional, how do you handle this here at the Windhoek site and elsewhere in the water sector in Namibia?
In Windhoek, as more young people are entering, not entering, but more taking over management roles, we found that we need to learn from the older generation before they go into retirement, to pay homage to the work that they've done, but also to have a knowledge transfer and a skills transfer to younger people. So that goes to organizational and personal succession planning, which is very, very important, because it's not a Windhoek problem only, it's a global problem where a lot of water-specific technical skills will exit the market in the coming future. So obviously that gap needs to be filled by competent young people. So it is very, very important for different factors like digitalization that Ms. Yumiko also spoke about, and also the new technology that has come onto the market for young people to actually be skilled and be competent. So that is definitely something that we focus on at our organization. And just speaking about that, in the following week, I'm going to Veolia headquarters to actually embark on the boost training. So it is something that we are focusing on, to actually have that smooth transition from the older generation to the newer generation.
I was going to say, I'm sure it's a real benefit to be part of a large international network like Veolia.
Yes, very, very, very beneficial.
Yeah. And Yumiko, perhaps you can expand upon that and explain how Veolia organizes the exchange of solutions on various issues within the company's international network.
I think, Veolia is a global organization, as you just said. We have 170 years of history, we have operation in 5 continents, and we have very frequent exchange of information expertise in the global network. I think it's very good. In case of Miyagi Prefecture and Hamamatsu City concession, which we won, we gained the support, lots of support from the network, especially from France, which is really the center of the the water expertise, and also from China and Hong Kong. China is very advanced in terms of using concession scheme in the water sectors. So they do have, knowledge of how to, optimize the operation, under the PPP concession scheme. So we brought, experts from France or in Hong Kong and mainland China to come to Japan to see the sites and, give us advice how to, utilize their experience in various parts. And also we brought our partner in the consortium to visit the head office to see the real operation, to be able to understand what values we can bring to the table in a consortium. So they understand what kind of solution we can propose to the government, and we as a team can come up with the best solutions. I think it's very important to really understand the needs of the local community, the city governments. Even though we are a global company, it has to be global and local. The local solution is very important. So first we try to understand, have exchange with the municipal governments to understand their needs, and also understand the local communities' concerns and needs. And then use our global network, global expertise to tailor-make that expertise to be adapted to really meet the needs of the local community. So I think that is the best part, combining the global expertise, global network with the needs of the local community. I think that's why we are, luckily, able to, win these 2 contracts.
And as a final question, can each of you perhaps compare from your experiences in Japan and Namibia how the challenges of providing urban water services in implementing PPP differ in the context of industrialized and developing countries?
If you want to go ahead.
Okay. I'll take this question first. Obviously, developed countries are very different from developing countries in terms of water governance, in terms of the skills and the experience that they already have. A lot of developing nations are not, they don't have the required experience, especially for PPP implementation, and they also don't have the implementation record for their PPP policies, as well as, say, some of the other policies that they have put in place. Most have policies and regulations, but it's the implementation of those policies and regulation that is still wanting. With that said, the governance structure, especially in the water industry, is also still developing. So that is one of the factors that make it very difficult to implement PPPs, especially in developing countries. And also the ability to attract funding is one of the key factors that makes PPP implementation very difficult. But definitely that can be solved with transparency. If we can get a lot of illumination and transparency in PPP implementation, that can, and also to show examples of PPPs that have been implemented successfully in developing countries, then there'll be definitely a greater uptake for these type of companies. Yes.
I think there's a first similarity between even the developed countries and developing countries. Developed countries like Japan or developing country like Namibia, because there's a resistance of having private sector in the water sector. I think that's the common thing. There's a challenge. It's a very politically sensitive area, drinking water sector. So I think, in both countries, we have to really tackle with the resistance of the general public, for having private sector involved, involved in the water sector. That's the commonality, I think. Differences, as Veneris mentioned, in Japan, public sector do have the capabilities, experience of operating water. In case of Yokohama, when I joined the Yokohama City, we already have 125 years of history of operating water and wastewater facilities. They're quite good. But again, they have to minimize the life cycle costs because of the budget constraint, population is shrinking, they face many challenges, so they cannot continue to work in the same way as they used to be. So they have to introduce digital solutions, more environmentally friendly solutions. They have to reduce the life cycle cost to generate the new funds for maintaining or upgrading, renovating the aging facilities. So because of the number of new challenges, they look at private sector to come up with new solutions. But fundamentally, they have the experience of operating the facility for many, many years. So they don't look at easily the private sector, which means that they admit that they don't have the skill sets. So there's a reluctance on the side of the government toward going to the private sector to get the support from the private sector. So it's really, I think, in this regard, leadership is very important. Unless the leader is really committed and courageous to use private sector under the PPP format, then it is very difficult to really, move forward. So in case of Hamamatsu City and Miyagi Prefecture and Yokohama City as well, very strong leader. The governor of Miyagi is very, dedicated and committed to really push for PPP. Hamamatsu City mayor was also very committed to, use PPP because, they think it is for the benefit of the citizens. It's a benefit for the general public, because it generates the savings by using private sector, regardless of the resistance of the general public. So it's important to really, have very progressive and very committed leader to push for PFI, a PPP.
Well, it's been a fascinating discussion with the two of you, with very different contexts you work in, with a lot of commonalities that we've come across here in this session, and also some interesting differences as well. So thank you very much for joining us here on this talk show.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric.
And thank you for watching this talk show session, and stay tuned for more throughout the World Water Week.